My favorite like memory of when people ask me what I do, when I told my goddaughter, who's 14 now, that I, like run people's Instagrams, run social media. She's like, "You just post on Instagram all day? Like, that's the best job ever. Like, I want to do that." And I'm like, if only it was that easy.
Welcome to COSIGN Conversations, and thank y'all for your support. Here are two ways you can continue to support COSIGN Magazine. One, hit subscribe below, subscribe to our channel. Thank y'all in advance. Number two, share our content. If you or any of your friends are entrepreneurs, creatives, influencers, etc., and want some motivational content on entrepreneurial stories, please share our content, have them watch our videos, and subscribe to our channel as well. And as always, continue the COSIGN life. Peace.
Thank y'all for tuning in to another episode of COSIGN Conversations. Today, we're heading all the way over to Los Angeles, California to meet with Teja Foster of Get Social with Teja. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Heard a lot about you. Love what you're doing. Love what you represent. And I really wanted to share your story with our audience. A little bit about COSIGN is we focus on entrepreneurs, creatives, and storytellers, and kind of getting their information out, their stories out, their business out. And then that way our audience can, learn from them and also, mimic their blueprint if there's an industry they want to get into. So to kind of start, I want to get your background story. So what were you doing before you started your agency?
Yes. So I've been in social media, kind of social justice work for 8 years now. I'm originally from Oakland, California, moved down to Los Angeles 13 years ago now, which is like crazy when I even say that out loud because I'm like, whoo, I'm getting old. So I've been in LA for a while. So LA has definitely adopted me. But I went to a school down here called Cal State Northridge, graduated with a degree in public relations. And I left school thinking that I wanted to be a publicist. I was working as a publicist for a few years, and I just didn't like it. It just wasn't the industry that it used to be. And I really saw, before social media became more of a monopoly, the eagerness for social media and how a lot of people were like, "Oh, we need to get in contact with such and such. We want them to do this." But it was more of a social media ask. So I'm like, let me start pivoting myself to start getting more into social media. As I see that that's more of the demand than, people wanting to get put in articles or anything else like that. So I started my journey doing social media. I came up on a job while I was working, just like in between jobs, trying to hustle, trying to get my social media stuff up. Because a lot about the industry, 8 years ago was older people didn't really understand social media. They're like, if you get it, then you handle it, you can do it. So I was doing like small mom and pop places, just trying to flip their brands. They've got these old, outdated GoDaddy websites,
Right.
bringing them up to date, just giving them a fresh new look. And they were going crazy for it. I was doing that for a year or two until I stumbled upon a job running a social media platform that was brand new called Schools Not Prisons. So we did a 14-city tour across California. We went into prisons, we went into underdeveloped communities, giving free concerts with like Pusha T, Miguel, Ty Dolla $ign, Mr. Fab. Like we brought everybody out, and all of these artists had connections, to the schools of prison pipeline and to people, currently in prison right now. Pusha T has a brother in jail, Ty Dolla $ign as well, Mr. Fab as well too. So these were all really important things to them. And it made me really realize, people move to LA like, "Oh, I want to work in the industry. I want to work with celebrities." It is not what you think it is. So when when I stumbled upon this job and finding that segue in between working with celebrities and working with artists, but for things that matter, I really, really found like my calling. It was like, okay, I still get to, do really cool things, work on really cool projects, but they mean something. And these artists take it more seriously. In the past, I worked doing PR and they would, they kind of blow you off. They kind of do whatever they want. But with this kind of work, like Miguel, we took him to a city called Adelanto. That's a little bit before Vegas, in the middle of nowhere, but they have a detention facility where they hold immigrants. And his parents are immigrants. He's a first generation American kid. So that was very dear to him. He went to the city, he got to know the kids, he went into the detention center. We did a lot of impactful things that he didn't realize he needed for himself, as well as, doing it for the community. So that's kind of my background and what I was doing until I started my agency. And again, I think it was about 4 or 5 years that I was doing it full force by myself. And a little bit before the pandemic, but during the pandemic, it was just like, okay, I need to stop being afraid of taking the risk and offering this to some people where they have somewhere that they want to work that I've wanted to work at too. Because I've left jobs because I didn't like the atmosphere, didn't like what they were doing. Also, just don't really like working with white people. So yeah, so I created a space that doesn't have that.
Tiffany, I understand. My last job was the same way, and from then I was like, you know what? I'm never going to work a job again. Like I'll just work with myself with people that I want to work with. People that
Exactly.
I can relate to. So was your job working at schools not prison? Was it school? You said schools not prisons, right?
Hmm.
Was that like your aha moment when you found out that you really wanted to be like a political activist, social activism?
Absolutely. I've growing up in Oakland in general, the history of the Black Panthers. My family has been in nonprofit foster care work since I could remember. So this was something that wasn't as direct as it needed to be. It was around me. I'm a Black woman from Oakland who grew up in the 90s, like this is instilled in me. All of this activism work was something that I day to day kind of did, but didn't realize it in early years, that I was always that one that's like, no, you need to register to vote. No, you need to da da da. I was always that friend. So for me to even become who I am now, most of my friends are like, yeah, this completely makes sense. This is like in your nature. It's almost like, what took you so long, to be honest?
Right. So let me ask you this: with creating your agency, but kind of like focusing in on like impact, has it been, I guess, difficult for you to find clients, or is it something that people actually come to you for now?
I have been extremely fortunate, and every time I say it, it kind of gets crazier. From the minute I started Schools Not Prisons, I've never put out an ad. I've never put myself out there that I was looking for work. Even from then, I was doing freelance, found a few clients word of mouth. I had left doing freelance and went to an agency actually, which was great. It was owned by a woman and she was amazing. And I really got a lot of the agency style kind of logistics that I needed. And working there, I think definitely pushed me to know what I wanted to do, but I also just wanted to go back working for myself too. Um, but but in doing that, it definitely built the foundation to be where I'm at today and know the type of people that I want to work with, the type of people that should also be doing this work. One thing about my agency is that I only employ women of color, as I believe that women of color are mostly impacted by everything that goes on in America, whether it's our advocacy, women's rights, being an immigrant. There's just every single thing that happens that is dictated by the government, women of color are impacted the most, and they help most of the situations move forward. Stacey Abrams, AOC, there's just so many women of color right now, to even now our vice president being the first Black woman as, a vice president. And we are the ones that should be telling these stories. So much in this industry of political advocacy, there's white men behind all of these campaigns, and it drives me absolutely insane. It's driven me insane for years. And when I really found that out back when I did Schools Not Prisons, it pushed me to really believe to put women of color at the forefront, because I have no idea why any white man thinks he could tell our story better than us, whether it be a Black man or a man of color. It's
Right.
just insane.
I agree. I definitely agree. So who was like your first, it doesn't have to be a big co-sign, but like your first co-sign, your first client when you actually went full-fledged with your own agency, just go around, like who was the first person that actually believed in you and your vision and signed on?
I will always sing praise to Carolyn DeWitt. She is the president and ED of Rock the Vote.
Okay.
Rock the Vote is actually a client that I've been working with since 2018 at my old agency. I had let them know that I was leaving my agency, and they were like, "Well, where are you going? Because we're coming too." And I
Oh,
was like, "Oh,
hmm.
okay." So they essentially started my agency, which I'm extremely grateful for. I worked on their pages from the midterm election to now the 2020 election. We registered over 2 million people just last year. So, and that's through social media, that's through, partner efforts, all of that. So Definitely Rock the Vote is my baby client. They have been with us from the very beginning, even before the beginning, and they essentially started my agency, which is definitely a blessing.
Not for sure. So one thing I want to get your take on is, so a lot of people see social media, digital marketing as like a trend, an easy way to get into, right? But I know there's so much more behind the scenes that goes into it. So kind of paint a picture for us for somebody who wanted to follow suit and create their own agency of what it really entails outside of just posting on social media for clients.
My favorite like memory of when people ask me what I do, when I told my goddaughter, who's 14 now, that I, like run people's Instagrams, run social media, she's like, "You just post on Instagram all day? Like, that's the best job ever. Like, I want to do that." And I'm like, if only it was that easy.
Right.
There's so much that goes into it. Planning, listening, understanding trends, understanding what's moving. Because think about what Instagram was when we first got it. Just pictures. There was no algorithm, there was no videos, all this Instagram plus stuff that's around now. They added on Snapchat, TikTok,
Mhm.
all of these other platforms. So it's definitely not just posting. If it was just posting, it would be easy and a lot of these influencers wouldn't be getting cashed out for it.
Right.
One thing that's different about what we do is, since we're in campaign and political advocacy work, it's not the same as making Instagrams look pretty. And it's not just Instagram. Most of these clients that we work with, their big suit is Twitter.
Right.
Um, Instagram, definitely, but also Facebook. That's where their communities are. Facebook groups, Twitter chats, Twitter threads, all of those type of more robust and research based content that goes into that. So I have a team of 9 now. We have a graphic designer, a video editor, copywriters, community managers, people that are actively watching the comments, watching the DMs, replying, boosting our engagement. There's literally endless components to what social media agencies hold and what they do. And a lot of people now, they come to us because they're like, social media can't just be one person anymore.
Right.
I can't be a graphic designer, a community manager, a strategist, like all of these things. You need people to execute and pass it down so they don't get diluted. Because when one person is working on everything, how do you get range? How do you get opinions? How do you get second looks? And I think that's what our strong suit is for our agency, is that when I get these smaller organizations that are like, I have a small budget, it's not that big. It's not that big maybe for one person, but it's big enough for a monthly stipend for an agency to have your design components, your video editing, and all of the things that you're doing combined into one.
Right. And another point too is not only the work you're putting into, but you always have to have a team learning consistently because things change so much, like algorithms, figuring out how to do the best reels, TikTok. And then, I've heard, not sure if it's a fact, but I've heard also that, Instagram kind of dings you for using outside apps in the platform. So they want you to stay in the platform.
They ding you for everything, everything. And it's absolutely true. We've almost switched into a reels based organization. We pump out endless reels now because that's the highest engagement. That's what's getting the most, the most bang for your buck now in the algorithm. So you have to change like that in a quick second. It was like one week we were making nice graphics, doing carousels, I have videos, changing it up, doing photo dumps. And now, boom, we're making 15 to 30-second reels for regular information that would have been a graphic 2 weeks ago.
Exactly. So you have to be on trend all the time. So another thing I read, so outside of Rock the Vote, which I know you said is your baby client, you've done amazing work too. It's like Sheet the People and clients like that. Kind of tell us, I know you can't put like your favorite on there, but what's been some of like your top campaign that you worked on, like some of your highlights? If you had to do your own highlight reel that you like, man, I can't believe I've been able to do this in my career. What has been those moments?
Absolutely. Last year in general, just working so closely with the 2020 election was just, that's a hell of a way to kick off your first year as an agency. We helped get Kamala in office. We registered over 2 million people, and that's through 2 different organizations. So that has definitely been the highlight. And even when I say it out loud, and they're like, "You've only been open a year," and I'm like, "Yeah, we did all that. I know." But this year has really, it's like what tops a 2020 election when you come out on top, you come out the victor, you did everything right that you could to push forward for what you wanted. This year we got a client that was, they are an AAPI group organization that was based in San Francisco that got a gig with like MTV and VH1, and we held a special called CS Unite for Change that was about AAPI solidarity and stop Asian hate, as all the hate crimes that spiked over this year. But what I loved about it the most, that it was about Black and brown solidarity. They put API people that were also mixed with Black, mixed with Hawaiian, mixed with, not Hawaiian, but mixed with Black, mixed with other races, that didn't just say, oh, stop Asian hate and only looks one way. So we did a really, really huge show with them that went across MTV, VH1, and all of Viacom channels back in May. It was they contacted us maybe like 3 weeks before the show. And we were like, we heard you do everything and we need absolutely everything. It was a stop, drop, and roll moment. Not to mention, it was a month before I was getting married from a pushback COVID wedding. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it, but y'all gotta leave me alone in June. But it was my favorite because we rolled out a video series of a lot of Black and brown solidarity. It kicked off with Yori Kumiachi and Malcolm X, who Yuri is a young Asian activist who passed away not that long ago. She was best friends with Malcolm X. She was there when he was murdered, actually was holding him as he was shot and gunned down. But people don't remember those moments, like there was all this fight about, the API community standing up for the Black community and vice versa when all the API hate stuff was going on in Black Lives Matter. But there's been so much solidarity rooted in those two communities from decades ago that it really shined light on the back and forth solidarity that we really have had for each other, which is something that I was very, very near to, because some of my best friends that I grew up with in Oakland, that's how Oakland is. It's very API heavy and it's very Black and brown heavy. So a lot of my god sisters, they're all Filipino. So that resonated with me so much. It was a huge, huge show. It was like Janae Aiko, Black Eyed Peas. They had some K-pop stars in there. Everybody's losing my mind right now, but I was hosted by Kim Jung, but it was so impactful to see real Black and brown solidarity and not just from one side, and knowing that the Asian community doesn't just look one way. So that has definitely been one of my highlights, and it was huge, 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 huge. I got to help produce it. I got to do the social strategy. My team got to be in on the day-to-day, and we now still to this day run their socials just because of the work was just so great and we had such a great relationship. But that was definitely probably our biggest moment, at least from this year. But overall, just being the go-to people for this kind of work has just truly been amazing to see, because a lot of the times, I know there was a moment last year when I got someone that needed a short-term client. They're like, oh, we're trying to get in touch with She the People, and we're trying to get in touch with all of these other smaller California organizations that we also run. And I was like, yeah, we run all those channels. And they were like, what? Yeah. And I was like, yeah, that's all of that is us.
That's so amazing. I have two kind of questions that kind of go back on that. But the first one is, how would you say someone can balance like impact, passion, but getting a paycheck at the same time? Because a lot of times at the beginning, making an impact, you don't really get paid for. You don't really know how to monetize impact. So like from what you've done, you've been fortunate enough to be able to do that successfully. Like, what advice would you give to somebody who wants to create like an impact company, community, or platform, but doesn't know how to, pursue their passion and monetize it?
That's a very good question. Even from back when I started Schools Not Prisons, I took the job. It was lower than I was getting paid from like regular jobs, other clients, and they were my only client for a while until I started venturing off. But the pay was lower, but I saw the value in doing that work and like, okay, you can complain about not getting paid $500 more, or do this really impactful work, blow it out the park, and set the tone for yourself, make a name for yourself. And that's exactly what I did. I don't know where I would be had I not taken that job and, validated myself in this work, because like I said, since then, that opened the space to every client that I have to this day has referenced knowing me from a Schools Not Prisons campaign, working from the California Endowment, something that I did years and years and years ago. That was on their radar. Now they're like, we saw you had an agency now. And it's like, oh my God. But it's about knowing when you're scaling to know your worth 100%. My worth was more back then, of course, but I knew that I had to build my clientele, build my name a little bit more in this certain space to get what I wanted essentially. And now that I'm here, I know that all of that came from patience, but as well as knowing when to say no, essentially. Some people will take advantage of you. They're like, oh, I've got a $2,000 budget and I want to text you every single day. And I'm like, no, like, no. And I'm like that now. I've dropped clients in this year that I've dropped probably like 3 or 4 clients that I'm like, no, I don't wear out my employees. I come from that toxic workplace. I'm not going to have you belittling them, DMing them crazy things on Instagram. People get crazy. But knowing when to do something, I think knowing when to do something when it's not just for money has probably been the biggest eye opener for me, truly, because if I'm passionate about it, if I'm passionate about your campaign, the money is going to complement itself, because most of those people, they're ready to pay.
Right.
The ones that are like, oh, I have 25 ideas. And I'm like, you need a 25 idea person, because that is not me. And it's knowing when to say that. Do not overwork yourself when people are underpaying. Someone saying your rate is too high, or can you come in at a lower rate? Say no.
Right.
Don't stress yourself out. Raise your prices when you want to, when you feel that it's important for you, and stand beside it, because it'll be worth it in the long run for the people that are paying what they understand your worth is.
That's amazing, an amazing response. And how do you feel location plays when it comes to like high level business, right? With you being in California, Oakland, Los Angeles, you have access to everybody. But for somebody who maybe is in, middle of America, yes, there's social media, but it's not the same as being close proximity to work with these clients. How do you say location plays in forming a business of your sorts?
Location plays a lot. And one thing that I absolutely love about my agency is that it's fully remote. So I have employees in Texas, Chicago, New York. I'm trying to like expand all over the place, especially when we go back in person, because, social justice is everywhere. If there's a march going on, all of us being in LA does us no justice. If there's a march going on in Chicago and in LA, I've got somebody there that can go out and see what's going on and get different perspectives. And a lot of everything that happens in the Black Lives Matter movement are in these random states that we've never been to. Like, who knew what Ferguson, Missouri was before Ferguson happened? I didn't. So it's important to be kind of all over the place. But even in the social justice space, if you are in, not, let's say Ferguson is what it is now, but let's say you're in Minneapolis and you're like, there's not a Black Lives Matter chapter out here. There's not this. There is someone doing some type of activism work, whether it's for foster youth, whether it's for a homeless crisis, whether it's for COVID-19, getting the information out about the vaccine or misinformation. There is someone out in wherever you are that is doing some type of activism work, because every single place in America is screwed. No place is a walk in the park and has everything understood and in a great place. So there's something for the social justice space in every single state. And I stand by that 100%, because there's work to be done everywhere.
Most definitely.
Unfortunately.
True. What do you do for yourself and your team as far as, mental health? Because with you all being women and women of color, you take on a lot of that stuff, even though it's work, but a lot of stuff, really resonates with you personally. What do y'all do for your mental health to stay sane, to be able to complete the jobs?
It's an amazing question, because it's a journey. People ask me all the time, like, how do you combat this and how do you stay sane and how do you keep going? It's a lot of seeing my work in real time impact people. I'm my own activist to my own community, to my own, my own Instagram followers that are like, Teja, there's an election, the election recall coming up, or recall election coming up in California. People are like, should I actually vote? And I'm like, absolutely fucking yes. Like, but it's definitely, mental health for us is important. I offer PTO days, but I don't offer them as like, here's your sick days and here's your personal days. It's like, if you need a day, you take your PTO day, you take it. You don't need to explain to me why. You want to go to Disneyland? Go to Disneyland because you're flustered. You have too much going on. It's also about reading the room. When Derek Chauvin was convicted of murdering George Floyd, we have to react to that. We have to react internally to our own. I broke down crying, but at the same time, I have to get out on all my channels the verdict, what this means, moving forward, waiting on sentencing. We have to, rationalize it and get it out to people while internalizing it as, a Black woman in America. I gave my team the rest of that day off because I'm like, get your post out and everybody take the rest of the day off and clear your mind, understand what just happened, because it's a lot. Someone gets murdered and we have to instantly respond to that stuff before we even get to process it and really think about it. When the Capitol was overtaken in January, it was like watching that in real time was just like, what is going on? Like, how are things like this allowed? All of the Black Lives Matter things that we've been a part of, all of the marches that we've gone out to, and to see this play out like this, where it's just clearly white supremacy. And, Fox News and all of these people deny that it's this bad. It's just like, how do you go to sleep at night, like understanding that the world is like that? But I think we wake up the next day knowing that what we're doing is needed. And the work that we are doing is one of those pandemic proof type of situations, because I didn't get one moment to sit down in the pandemic. I'll tell you that much. This was constant work. COVID hit Black and brown communities. George Floyd happened. Then it was election time. It was like there was no break for me in 2020. And me on the personal side, I had to postpone my wedding. I was turning 30, which I, planned to have a 30th year. I had also left my agency in 2019, like, 2020, I'm out at the rooftop pools every day during the summer. I'm thinking like, I'm back lit. I don't have any boss. Like, I get to go and hang out and do what I want and work from the pool. And all of that changed. My great grandmother passed away from COVID after beating COVID. She was 99. She was already very old, but she beat COVID at 99 and ended up still passing away. But these are all personal things that people were going through, but the world was suffering. And it was either like, I can fold and kind of be in my own feelings and wander in all of these, all these thoughts that I have, or I can go hard in my work and kind of put all that frustration and all of that stuff out into my work to get this message out, because there's not a lot of people doing the work that I'm doing. And that's essentially what I did. And even with starting my agency, it was a fear thing that like, I don't know anything about running a business and being somebody's boss, but it's like, even at my old agency, I was the boss. And people gravitated towards me to look to what to do for things. So it was just like, why am I selling myself short and also selling these women of color short to not have a place where they feel comfortable, where they can wake up and be like, Teja, it's the first day of my cycle and I feel like shit. And I'm like, I hear you. So do I. Take the day off. Right. Like, that's important for women,
No, definitely. I have a 13-year-old daughter, so I get it.
Exactly.
She doesn't feel like bothered with me. I'm like, hey, I understand. It's okay. We'll reconvene later.
Exactly.
But also want to say, what's the advice you give somebody who wants to start, like who maybe doesn't have the capacity to do it full time, but actually wants to get more involved, social activism, social justice. They don't really know where to start. I mean, yeah, they can do the research, but sometimes I feel like people get overwhelmed. So what's like something you would say, step A, B, C, 1, 2, 3 to kind of get started if you want to do more in your community?
I think a lot of people are afraid that of being judged by what they want to do. Right. And it's very like, oh, well, somebody else said that, online activism or only tweeting about it is da-da-da. And it's like, that's a great start. Don't let people think that you have to be out on the front line in the streets during a pandemic, because that's not realistic. I put myself on the front lines all throughout the years. And during 2020, I was just like, no, I can't physically do it anymore. I've been doing it for so long. And if the people that haven't want to take the turn to step up, that's great. But I couldn't put myself at a health risk. I couldn't put my team at a health as a health risk. But anything that you're doing, signing petitions is the most important. If you're like, I want to start somewhere, get out there, but I don't know where to, it's signing petitions. Start an email that is just for you signing petitions, because I know people get weary of that because then they get all these emails and all of these stuff, like they get a part of all these lists. Start an email just for your activism work, for things that you want to sign on and add your name onto. That's going to be the best place. Sign on to as many petitions, share them out, share them wide, and be a leader for people that are around you. I remember when the vaccine came out, I was one of the first people really that I knew to get the vaccine. My dad knew someone that was running a clinic. And they were like, we can get you in immediately. And I was like, I'm taking it. I don't care. And I probably got about 30 people that wrote back to me that me sharing my journey of how me getting the vaccine convinced them to get it. It's small things like that that you're just like, you know, people are like, oh, don't nobody care about your post, don't nobody care about this, da, 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 da. But like your words matter. I just did an interview about like social media tweets and all of this stuff and pertaining to Lizzo and that mammy comment that was made about her. But like your tweets matter. You may, you know, tweet something thinking it's a joke, thinking that it doesn't move anybody, thinking that doesn't motivate somebody, but it does. And people see it, people will linger on to it, and people will remember it. And there's just moments like that where being your own activist before feeling like you have to jump all the way into like being a part of a community or being on like a weekly call or a weekly whatever, find things that matter to you and start talking about them outwardly. If the vaccine is important to you, it's not necessarily about convincing people to get the vaccine, but it's also about tackling misinformation. Someone literally yesterday was just like, I don't know, like, I'm just scared. And I'm like, what are you scared about? And they told me, and I'm just like, this isn't true. That isn't true. This is a great concern. I understand where you feel about that. But I'm like, you know, I had 2 people that I know last week pass away from the coronavirus. Unvaccinated young people, healthy as hell. One didn't know they had an underlying health issue, but like, that's exactly it. You sometimes don't know. And so being an activist like that looks so many different ways. And I think that's what people forget. They feel like you need to look like, oh, I need to act like Patrisse Cullors, or I need to, you know, Michelle Obama is my like person that I need to be like. And it's like, no, activism looks anyway. It can look raunchy. It could be you talking out to people, explaining your frustration. You don't have to be all night, you know, nice and nitpick or whatever to look like an activist. It's about your truth and what information that is correct that you decide to put out there, because we know a lot about the activists that are putting out just complete lies. But do your own research and then put it out to, you know, put it out there. Your social media is the greatest way to be an activist, seriously, in the day and age that we are in.
I mean, that's actually a great point, because I know a lot of my friends, they get super lost, and you know, this is something that they could watch and now get more comfortable with, you know, just starting. So it's a great response. Speaking of social media, I think the one thing that a lot of my friends and I have in common, which I think you have great insight on, is we get overwhelmed, right? You have Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, Facebook, you know, and then everybody doesn't have a team. So it's like, how do you identify which platform you should spend the most time on, right? I know they can say whichever one, I guess, you have the largest community or audience on, but then it's like some people say, well, you need to be on this one because you're missing out, you know, maybe this type of engagement. So it's just, I don't know, there's no right answer, but then what's a good answer?
No, it's true. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because even for me, I'm like, still, I got to post on LinkedIn sometimes too for like stuff my agency is doing. And it's like, Twitter is my go-to. Okay. Absolutely 100%. The great thing about Twitter is that you can link out, you can put videos, there's no censors, there's no algorithm. It's out there and you can keep putting it back into your feed. You know, you tweet something out yesterday and you're like, I want people to see this again. I'm gonna retweet it in my own feed. Love that feature about Twitter. I think it's our greatest asset to Twitter that people don't remember. Pinning things to the top of your channel. But Twitter and then Instagram. Instagram is annoys the living shit out of me, but it's needed. It's there. And we know it's not gonna go anywhere, unfortunately, no matter how much they try and change it into a flea market and make us pay for things. But for Instagram, it's more than just posting pictures now. I go live a lot. I try to make reels a lot. It's tedious, but when you're an activist and talking forward to the camera is going to be most important. And there's a lot of people that are like, I don't really do the videos. I don't put myself out there. I don't da, da, da. It's true. I don't think that it is for everybody, which is why I like Twitter, because you can just kind of type all day. You can add some links. You can add your opinion without even really ever identifying yourself. I mean, I don't know if you're on Twitter a lot, but there's been so many scandals about like, there's one page, not Jabuki. There was another one that everyone for years thought it was like this Black woman. This person was like tweeting about being on their cycle and not feeling like it, and dudes like talking about them or sliding in their DMs. Whole time it was a guy. After
Wow.
like 4 years of unveiling, it was
Oh,
a guy. Everyone felt bamboozled. Like,
yeah,
what?
yeah,
But that's what Twitter is. You can kind of just facelessly put out your thoughts, put out your questions, and that's where people get most of their news from these days too. You know, what things are trending on Twitter are the things that are happening in pop culture. So it keeps you up to date. I wish Instagram had a trending type of thing that Twitter does. They should have adapted to that years ago, but let's not talk about that. But but Twitter is definitely going to be the go-to platform that I tell to everyone. And Instagram just being secondary because it's needed. You need to talk to people in a different type of, way. Pictures are nice, videos are nice, and the long form videos are actually really great too. So Instagram has its pluses, but I just truly think that Twitter is one of those everlasting kind of platforms. I don't know how old you are, but I know like back when Twitter kind of first got popping in like 2010, 2009, it's like, you could tweet good morning, you get like 30 replies.
yeah.
And people are like, oh, Twitter's not like that anymore. And it's not, but it's different in a way. It's definitely different, but it's more of a newsworthy. When something's happening, I go to Twitter first. There's an earthquake in LA. I go to Twitter and I'm like, what is earthquake? Los Angeles. And everyone's like, there's an earthquake. It's like, it's just a lot more retainable now than trying to Google something, or definitely not looking at on Instagram where you see things from 3 days ago at the top of your timeline.
Was is here.
Like, I didn't like it. I know I saw it, but I didn't like it. I didn't need to like it.
Exactly. Thanks for showing me this again. Swipe up. But what I do want to say is I want to give this the opportunity right now for you to leave our audience with some type of motivation or advice. It doesn't have to be specifically about social media. It could be about life in general. It could be about social justice. It could be about anything that you personally feel committed to, that you want to kind of like highlight for people and just kind of like motivate and inspire them. Our audience are like entrepreneurs, creatives, or they, inspire to be that. And sometimes it's hard for them to keep going. Sometimes it's hard for them to find their peace. So whatever you want to share with the audience that is on your heart, we would love to give you this platform to share that with them right now.
Yes. So my biggest kind of message I always like to give is staying true to yourself and being as real as possible. A lot of times when people segue into being an agency owner or starting their own business, they feel like they can't be themselves on their social media because other people are watching or people are invested. And I can't tell you how many times that I've gotten clients from simply being myself. My Twitter account is public. I offer it up on my website, and it is me on there talking my shit. I do not care. And I think that is important because clients should know what they're getting, and it's ultimately sometimes why they want to work with you. They're like, yes, I want my social media to have this type of person or this type of raunchiness or this type of person that's in the headspace that is thinking this way. We have a lot of nonpartisan clients, and I'm on my Twitter account or my Instagram account like, fuck Donald Trump. And it's like, like that's real. I think a lot of people try and shun away from being themselves outright on social media because of how it looks or how it may ruffle other people's feathers. And I want you to know that if those people are bothered by it, then they shouldn't be working with you. Staying true to who you are is a part of your work. I am my brand, so I'm not going to shy away from anything. I'm talking about the baby getting whatever form of canceled and talking crap about Little Nas X on my social media. Whether if somebody comes and they're like, oh, I don't like her supporting Little Nas X, then if you don't like me supporting people that are, in a different community, then we are not the right people for you. That's always my logic with it. If someone doesn't agree with something on your social media and it's clouding them from working with you, and that aligns with your values, which is why you put it out there, it's not the right person to work with. Don't change yourself to work with certain clients because they're not changing themselves to work with you. And that goes to even what I was talking about with money, doing things that align with you. Never take the cop out and do something just because it's some good money, because it will either haunt you or it'll in the end not be the money that you thought it was worth. So always staying true to yourself. I run my Instagram account how I want to. I put activists in there. I put Black Girl Magic in there. I put Black Girl Luxury in there. And I'm never going to shy away from showing too much of myself or if my body is out there, because that's me. And I want people to know that that's what they're getting. When I log on a call and and my hair looks a certain different way, or if I show up to something and I have something on, I want people to know that that's who I am from the jump, and then that there's no surprises at all.
That's amazing. And that's definitely great advice, because I know a lot of times we try to specifically act one certain way so that we don't offend potential clients, et cetera. But that's draining, because you have to put on an act and you just really can't.
Exactly. And me being from Oakland, I'm just like, that's just how Oakland is. I'm like, I'm always straightforward. I'm real too. I'm a Scorpio, so it's just like all the way down the list. I'm gonna tell you how it is.
Yeah. Scorpios are a lot, so that's amazing. Teja, I appreciate your time so much. This was a great conversation. Let people know where they can follow you at. Give us your website, your Instagram, and your Twitter. You've inspired me to get back on Twitter, so that's
Yes.
my to-do list for today is figure out my password for Twitter, so so I can get active again, because I have no idea what it is. I have no idea the email, because it was so long ago. But I'm focused today.
I got you for sure. When you do, you can find me too, and I'll steer you in the right direction on Twitter. I'd be like, all right, follow these people. This is how you get your timeline popping. So my agency is getsocialwithteja.com. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Teja Tej, TejaTej, I believe, or it's TejaAATEJ. Teja Tej, just like Flavor Flav. And that's on Instagram and on Twitter. And like I said, getsocialwithteja.com. You can follow me on there for just everyday kind of news updating. I'm always responding to what's going on in the world, whether it's a versus battle, whether it's the FDA approving the vaccine today. I got all types of range. So go ahead and follow me if you're looking for those kind of news updates.
That's amazing. Okay, last question. Did you go for Dipset or the Locks?
Oh, I was already for the locks before it. I know.
That's so, I'm not gonna lie. I was Dipset all day, and then when I see the Locks come out, I was like, okay, I see you.
That's what people forget. Dipset had an effect on us. We all remember the pink tea days, but I'm like, but the locks be rapping, and they got songs.
Maybe rap. I completely forgot, and that's crazy. And I had to apologize to them.
A lot of people did.
I had to apologize. I wasn't prepared, but they got me back.
You got to think too, when Jadakiss and Fab went against each other, people were like, "Oh, Fab!" Like people just go for the more popular person, and Jadakiss blew it out the park.
Yeah. Kiss knows what he's doing.
He did, and he prepared everybody else for it. They came in sync. They had the song. I was like, "This is what I'm talking about."
Flawless victory.
It was great though. Me and my husband just watched it back too, so it was definitely one of those. I loved it.
You can do that, but thank you so much. I'm gonna get on Twitter, and then we could tweet each other, and and I'll follow you and all that.
100%. So find that password. I'm on there.
Sounds great. I appreciate the time. You have a great day, and thank you so much again.
You too. Thanks so much. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you for watching the interview. If you enjoyed our content, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. We appreciate your support. And as always, please live the COSIGN life.